I love topiaries, and I think they're fantastic. I think people feel sensitive because it's such an incredibly bold thing to do, especially on a large scale. Sometime in the 16th century, we don't really know, but we know that lots of gardens, and royal gardens in particular, were inhabited by the great colonies of strange creatures made out of verdure that were clipped into strange shapes. And they said at the time, I think, that there was hardly any great garden that didn't have some sort of vegetation that wasn't scarred by scissors. If you're going to shape a plant, then you must make it into something bizarre and grotesque. And they were always against nature. I mean, I think that's, again, the people who criticize the art as being something rather unpleasant was the fact that you would actually take your scissors to these places, these wonderful trees and things, and shape them into something rather peculiar and unnatural.
As human beings, we like to know where our roots are, and past history is something that's very interesting to us and is part of who we are and where we've come from, and something to celebrate. Quite often St Mary's is known as the church on the green, but it could easily be the church with the peacocks. And I think it does make St Mary's a very special and unique place.
I suspect that it probably had to do with peculiarity of the way they first developed, and peacocks were something that were traditionally associated with royalty, or they could be associated with pagan rituals. There was a legend that had been going around since the early 19th century, which was disseminated by a poem by Mr. Hood. And he talks about how the peacocks were clipped in the first instance by a rich gentleman who lived in the neighbourhood of the church, who was annoyed that the two young ladies whom he'd hoped to marry had turned him down. And so in his anger, he decided to clip these ewes as these proud peacocks, these two spinsters who had denied him the pleasure of becoming his wives.
Apparently King Solomon had peacocks, so they are mentioned in the Bible. There is also the dragon that goes through the middle, so that it sounds as though there's some sort of legend that goes behind all that. In some ways, peacocks can be symbols of pride, but they're also symbols of great beauty. We've got various pictures in the church showing them in various states and of pattern and shape. They fell into disrepair, I think, following the Second World War, and then were recreated in 1990. We had an expert from Holland came over to help, and the same guy trims the peacocks. For 2 out of the 3 years he does it from ladders. Every third year we need a scaffold to get up to the top and keep it all looking tidy.
And some eccentrics actually caused a revival in topiary arts. And one is, of course, at Elveston Castle, where Lord Peterson had begun creating his amazing gardens in the 1830s. And he single-handedly revived the whole art of topiary for Victorians. What he did was he moved great ancient trees as far as 30 or 40 miles away to his estate. He was known at the time as the Elgin of topiary art. So vast was his appetite for bringing back these great antiquities. And he would transport them with this wonderful machine that his gardener, Mr. Barron, had devised, the Scots gardener, and the pair of them moved these things great distances. And they were huge trees, and some were said to be at the time 300 to 400 years old. Having been very well born, he lived a rather raffish life and was a great dandy in the Regency, influencing many people such as George IV in things like his nocturnal behaviour. He didn't get up until 6 at night. In his later life developed a strange infatuation with an actress whom he married, and it led to this period of social oblivion because his own class disowned him, and he just decided to bugger off, as it were, to the countryside and to create, as it were, a gilded cage for his actress wife. And they lived there happily, as we think. And he made this chivalric garden. And so the garden was intended to represent all the virtues of a chivalrous life. I like when you walk down a strange street in some suburb or some part of any place in the kingdom and all of a sudden come across a teddy bear in topiary or another peacock or a haughty stork or something like that. It really is fantastically fun, and you know that someone is having a good, it is pleasurable to do these things. it still brings a smile to our face, I think, when we see something really bizarre carved out of greenery.